Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and we are back with what I'm hoping is our final chapter here, classic Greek mythology. So, yeah, let's go ahead and just hop into this final chapter. The Norse gods. No god of Greece could be heroic. All the Olympians were immortal and invincible. They could never feel the glow of courage. They could never defy danger. When uh, they fought, they were sure of victory and no harm could ever come near them. It was different in Asgard. The giants whose city was Jotunheim were the active, persistent enemies of the Aesir, as the gods were called. And they not only were in ever present danger, but knew that in the end complete victory was assured to them. This knowledge was heavy upon the hearts of the dwellers in Asgard, but it weighed heaviest on their chief and ruler, Odin. Like Zeus, Odin was the Sky Father, clad in a cloud gray kirtle and a hood as blue as the sky. But there the resemblance ends. It would be hard to conceive anything less like the Zeus of Homer than Odin. He is a strange and solemn figure, always aloof. Even when he sits at the feasts of the gods in his golden palace, Gladheim, or with the heroes in Valhalla, he eats nothing. The food set before him he gives to the two wolves who crouch at his feet. On his shoulders perch two ravens, who fly each day through the world and bring him back news of all that men do. The name of one is Thought, Hugin, and the other Memory, Munin. While the other gods feasted, Odin pondered on what Thought and Memory taught him. He had the responsibility more than all the other gods together of postponing as long as possible the day of doom, Ragnarok, when heaven and earth would be destroyed. He was the All-Father, supreme among gods and men. Yet even so, he constantly sought for more wisdom. He went down to the well of wisdom guarded by Mimir the wise, to beg for a draught from it. And when Mimir answered that he must pay for it with one of his eyes, he consented to lose the eye. He won the knowledge of the runes too by suffering. The runes were magical inscriptions immensely powerful for him who could inscribe them on anything: wood, metal, stone. Odin feared them at the cost of mysterious pain. Odin learned them at the cost of mysterious pain. He says in the Elder Edda that he hung 9 whole nights in a wind-rocked tree, wounded with a spear. I was offered to Odin myself to myself, on that tree of which no man knows. He passed the hard-won knowledge on to men. They too were able to use the runes to protect themselves. He imperiled his life again to take away from the giants the scaldic mead which made anyone who tasted it a poet. This good gift he bestowed upon men as well as upon the gods. In all ways, he was mankind's benefactor. Maidens were his attendants, the Valkyries. They waited on the table in Asgard and kept the drinking horns full. But their chief task was to go to the battlefield and decide at Odin's bidding who should win and who should die, and carry the brave dead to Odin. Val means slain, and the Valkyries were the choosers of the slain. And the place to which they brought the heroes was the hall of the slain, Valhalla. In battle, the hero doomed to die would see maidens excellent in beauty, riding their steeds in shining armor, solemn and deep in thought, with their white hands beckoning. Wednesday, of course, is Odin's day. The southern form of his name was Woden. Of the other gods, only 5 were important: Balder, Thor, Freyr, Heimdall, and Tyr. Balder was the most beloved of the gods, on earth as in heaven. His death was the first of the disasters which fell upon the gods. One night he was troubled with dreams which seemed to foretell some great danger to him. When his mother, Frigga, the wife of Odin, heard this, she determined to protect him from the least chance of danger. She went through the world and exacted an oath from everything, all things with life and without life, never to do him harm. But Odin still feared. He rode down to Niflheim, the world of the dead, where he found the dwelling of Hela, or Hel, the goddess of the dead, and all decked out in a festal array. A wise woman told him for whom the house had been made ready. The mead has been brewed for Balder. The hope of the high gods has gone. Odin knew that Balder must die, but the other gods believed that Frigga had made him safe. They played a game accordingly, which gave them much pleasure. They would try to hit Balder, to throw a stone at him, or hurl a dart, or shoot an arrow, or strike him with a sword. But always the weapons fell short of him, or rode harmlessly away. Nothing would hurt Balder. He seemed raised above them by this strange exemption, and all honored him for it. Except one only, Loki. He was not a god, but the son of a giant, and wherever he came, trouble followed. He continually involved the gods in difficulties and dangers, but he was allowed to come freely to Asgard because, for some reason never explained, Odin had sworn brotherhood with him. He always hated the good and was jealous of Balder. He determined to do his best to find some way of injuring him. He went to Frigga disguised as a woman and entered into talk with her. Frigga told him of the journey to ensure Balder's safety, and how everything had sworn to do him no harm. Except for one little shrub, she said. The mistletoe, so insignificant she had passed it by. That was enough for Loki. He got the mistletoe and went with it to where the gods were amusing themselves. Hoder, Balder's brother, who it was blind, sat apart. "Why not join in the game?" asked Loki. "Blind as I am," said Hoder, "and with nothing to throw at Balder either?" "Oh, do your part," Loki said. "Here is a twig. Throw it, and I will direct your aim." Hoder took the mistletoe and hurled it with all his strength. Under Loki's guidance, it sped to Balder and pierced his heart. Balder fell to the ground dead. His mother refused even then to give up hope. Frigga cried out to the gods for a volunteer to go down to Hela and try to ransom Balder. Hermod, one of the sons, offered himself. Odin gave him his horse Sleipnir, and he sped down to Niflheim. The others prepared the funeral. They built a lofty pyre with a great ship, and there they laid Balder's body. Nanna, his wife, went to look at it for the last time. Her heart broke, and she fell to the deck dead. Her body was placed beside his. Then the pyre was kindled and the ship pushed from the shore. As it sailed out to sea, the flames leaped up and wrapped it in fire. Then Hermod reached Hela with the gods' petition. She answered that she would give Balder back if it were proved to her that all everywhere mourned for him. But if one thing or one living creature refused to weep for him, she would keep him. The gods dispatched messengers everywhere to ask all creation to shed tears so that Balder could be redeemed from death. They met with no refusal. Heaven and earth and everything therein wept willingly for the beloved god. The messengers, rejoicing, started back to carry the news to the gods. Then, almost at the end of their journey, they came upon a giantess, and all the sorrow of the world was turned to futility, for she refused to weep. "Only dry tears will you get from me," she said mockingly. "I had no good from Balder, nor will I give him good." So Hela kept her dead. Loki was punished. The gods seized him and bound him in a deep cavern. Above his head a serpent was placed so that its venom fell upon his face, causing him unutterable pain. But his wife, Sigyn, came to help him. She took her place at his side and caught the venom in a cup. Even so, whenever she had to empty the cup, the poison fell on him. Though but for a moment, his agony was so intense that his convulsions shook the earth. Of the three other great gods, Thor was the thunder god, for whom Thursday is named, the strongest of the Aesir. Freyr cared for the fruits of the earth. Heimdall was the warder of the Bifrost, the rainbow bridge which led to Asgard. Tyr was the god of war, for whom Tuesday, once Tyrsday, was named. In Asgard, goddesses were not as important as they were in Olympus. Not one among the Norse goddesses is compared to Athena, and only two are really notable. Frigga, Odin's wife, for whom some say Friday is named, was reputed to be very wise, but she was also very silent, and she told no one, not even Odin, what she knew. She is a vague figure, oftenest depicted at her spinning wheel, where the threads she spins are of gold. But what she spins them for is a secret. Freya, the goddess of love and beauty, but strangely to our ideas, half those are slain in the battle were hers. Odin's Valkyries could carry only half to Valhalla. Freya herself rode to the battlefield and claimed her share of the dead, and to the Norse poets that was a natural and fitting office for the goddess of love. Friday is generally held to have been named for her. But there was one realm which was handed over to the solid rule of a goddess. The kingdom of death was Hela's. No god had any authority there, not Odin even. Asgard the Godin belonged to the gods. Glorious Valhalla to the heroes. Midgard was the battlefield for men, not the business of women. Gudrun in the Elder Edda says, "The fierceness of men rules the fate of women. The cold, pale world of this shadowy dead were women's sphere in Norse mythology." The creation. In the Elder Edda, a wise woman says, "Of old there was nothing, nor sand, nor sea, nor cool waves. No earth, no heaven above, only the yawning chasm. The sun knew not her dwelling, nor the moon his realm. The stars had not their places. But the chasm, tremendous though it was, did not extend everywhere. Far to the north was Niflheim, the cold realm of death, and far to the south was Muspelheim, the land of fire. From Niflheim 12 rivers poured, which flowed into the chasm, and freezing there, filled it slowly up with ice. From Muspelheim came fiery clouds that turned the ice to mist. Drops of water fell from the mist, and out of them there were formed the Frost Maidens and Ymir, the first giant. His son was Odin's father, whose mother and wife were Frost Maidens. Odin and his 2 brothers killed Ymir. They made the earth and the sky from him, and the sea from his blood, and earth from his body, the heavens from his skull. They took sparks from Muspelheim and placed them in the sky, as the sun, moon, and stars. The earth was round and encircled by the sea. A great wall, which the gods built out of Ymir's eyebrows, defended the place where mankind was to live. The space within was called Midgard. Here the first man and woman were created from trees, the man from an ash tree, the woman from an elm. They were the parents of all mankind. In the world were also dwarves, ugly creatures, but masterly craftsmen, who lived under the earth, and elves, lovely sprites, who tended the flowers and streams. A wondrous ash tree, Yggdrasil, supported the universe. It stuck its roots through the worlds. 3 roots there are to Yggdrasil. Hell lives beneath the first, beneath the second the frost giants, and men beneath the third. It is also said that one of the roots goes up to Asgard. Beside this root was a well of white water, Urda's well, so holy that none might drink of it. The 3 Norns guarded it, who allot their lives to the sons of men, and assign to them their fate. The 3 were Urda, the past, Verdandi, the present, and Skuld, the future. Here, each day, the gods came passing over the quivering rainbow bridge to sit beside the well and pass judgment on the deeds of men. Another well beneath another root was the well of knowledge, guarded by Mimir the wise. Over Yggdrasil, as over Asgard, hung the thread of destruction. Like the gods, it was doomed to die. A serpent and his brood gnawed continually at the root beside Niflheim, Hell's home. Some say they would succeed in killing the tree, and the universe would come crashing down. The frost giants and the mountain giants who lived in Jotunheim were the enemies of all that is good. They were the brutal powers of earth, and in the inevitable contest between them and the divine powers of heaven, brute force would conquer. The gods are doomed and the end is death. But such a belief is contrary to the deepest conviction of the human spirit, that good is stronger than evil. Even these sternly hopeless Norsemen, whose daily life in the icy land through the black winters was a perpetual challenge to heroism, saw a faraway light break through the darkness. There is a prophecy in the Elder Edda, singularly like the book of Revelation, that after the defeat of the gods, when the sun turns black, earth sinks in the sea, the hot stars fall from the sky, the fire leaps high about heaven itself. There would be a new heaven and a new earth, in wondrous beauty once again, the dwellings roofed with gold, the fields unsowed bare ripened fruit, in happiness forevermore. Then would come the reign of the one who was highest even than was higher even than Odin and beyond the reach of evil. A greater than all, but I dare not ever speak his name. And there are few who can see beyond the moment when Odin falls. This vision of happiness, infinitely remote, seems a thin sustenance against despair, and it was the only hope the Eddas afforded. The Norse wisdom. Another view of the Norse character, oddly unlike its heroic aspect, is also given prominence in the Elder Edda. There are several collections of wise sayings which not only do not reflect heroism at all, but give a view of life which dispenses with it. This Norse wisdom literature is far less profound than the Hebrew book of Proverbs. Indeed, it rarely deserves to have the great word wisdom applied to it. But the Norsemen who created it had at any rate a large store of good sense, a striking contrast to the uncompromising spirit of the hero. Like the writers of Proverbs, the authors seem old. They are men of experience who have meditated on human affairs. Once, no doubt, they were heroes, but now they have retired from battlefields and they see things from a different point of view. Sometimes they even look at life with a touch of humor. There lies less good than most believe in L for mortal men. A man knows nothing if he knows not that wealth oft begins an ape. A coward thinks he will live forever if only he can shun warfare. Tell one of your thoughts, but beware of two. All know what is known to thee, or known to three. A silly man lies awake at night, thinking of many things. When the morning comes, he is worn with care, and his trouble is just as it was. Some show a shrewd knowledge of human nature. A paltry man and poor of mind is he who mocks at all things. Brave men can live well anywhere. A coward dreads all things. Now and then they are cheerful, almost light-hearted. I once was young and traveled alone. I met another and thought myself rich. Man is the joy of man. Be a friend to your friend. Give him laughter for laughter. To a good friend's house the path is straight, though he is far away. A surprisingly tolerant spirit appears occasionally. No man has nothing but misery, let him be never so sick. To this one his sons are a joy, and to that his kin, to another his wealth, and to yet another the good he has done. In a maiden's words let no man place faith, nor in what a woman says, but I know men and women both. Men's minds are unstable toward women. None so good that he has no faults. Let none so wicked that he is worth naught. There is real depth of sight sometimes. Moderately wise each one should be, not overwise, for a man's heart is seldom glad. Cattle die and kindred die, we also die. But I know one thing that never dies, judgment on each one dead. 2 lines near the end of the most important of the collections show wisdom. The mind knows only what lies near the heart. Along with their truly awe-inspiring heroism, these men of the North had delightful common sense. The combination seems impossible, but the poems are here to prove it. By race, we are connected with the Norse. Our culture goes back to the Greeks. Norse mythology and Greek mythology together give a clear picture of what the peoples were like, from whom comes a major part of our spiritual and intellectual inheritance. That ends the actual chapter. Now we have the principal gods in a family tree. The principal gods, heaven, also known as Uranus, was with Gaia, Earth, and they produced the other titans, Cronus, Rhea, Cous, Phoebe, Ocean, and Tethya. We have Cronus getting together with Rhea to form the Greek gods. Hestia, Pluto, Poseidon, Zeus, Hera, Demeter. So yeah. Pluto was also known as Hades, if it's kind of unfamiliar to you who he was, but yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Where was the 7th? I thought there were 7 gods born to that particular coupling. I may be wrong though. Anyway, Cous and Phoebe would give birth to Leto. And Ocean and Tethya would give birth to Iapetus. Now, Iapetus would produce other titans: Prometheus, Atlas, and Epimetheus. Of course, Prometheus gave man fire. Atlas held up the world. I'm not sure about Epimetheus. Not as well known to me, but yeah. Anyway. Atlas would have a daughter, Maya, and Epimetheus would have a daughter, Dione. And of course, Zeus could not keep it in his toga. He would get together with Hera and give birth to other gods. Get together with Demeter, of which they would give birth to Persephone. So yeah, and those two were his own sisters, Hera and Demeter. It's like, seriously, dude? He would get together with Leto, and they would have two gods. He would get together with Maya to have another god, and Dione to have one of the origin stories of a particular god. But yeah, Zeus, dude, learn to keep it in your toga. With Hera, he would have, he would get Hera pregnant to have Ares, Hebe, and Hephaestus. Sometimes Hephaestus is also said to be the only son, that Ares was not born to Hera. So yeah, Leto and Zeus. Yeah, he would get Leto pregnant and she would have Apollo and Artemis. He would get Demeter pregnant and give birth to Persephone. Demeter would give birth to Persephone. He would get Maya pregnant and give birth to Hermes. And get Dione pregnant as one of the origin stories for Aphrodite. He really was busy just sticking it to everything he found attractive. Even mortals. Disguising himself as a bull or a horse or a swan. It's like, dude, quit it. Anyway, descendants of Prometheus is the next tree. Prometheus had Deucalion, Epimetheus with Pandora had Pyra. Wonder if it's the same Epimetheus from the last family tree we was looking at. That's interesting. But Deucalion and Pyra would get together. They would have Helen, and she would then, along the line, have Aeolus, who would have, further along the line, Nephili, or actually Athamas, who was with Nephili, in which she gave birth to Phrixus and Helle, but was also with Ino, giving birth to Melicertes. But Ino was with Thermisto. They would later down the line have Shonus, and later have the hero Atlanta, one of the big names in Greek mythology. But from that line up earlier of Helen and Aeolus, we would also see Sisyphus in the tree, who would lead to Glaucus, who went after getting together with Eurynome, birthed Bellerophon, or Bellerophon, who is again another one of the big heroes. Was famous as one of, I believe, as one of the riders of the Pegasus. But yeah. And again, down that same tree from Helen and Aeolus, on the other side, we have Salmoneus, who would lead to Tyro. Tyro would have a thing with Poseidon, and they would have a number of children. Neleus, who would lead to Nestor, who would lead to Antilochus, and Peleus, who would lead to Alcestis. But she was also with Crathius, which potentially led to Aeson, which led to Jason, of Jason and the Argonauts. And then also Pheres, which led to Admetus, who ended up getting together with Alcestis. Another family tree, ancestors of Perseus and Hercules. Zeus got together with Io, which led to Epaphus, which led to Libya, who got together with Poseidon, which led to Belus, which led to the family siblings Aegyptus, Donius, and Cepheus the first. Aegyptus would lead to Lynceus, and Donius would lead to Hypermnestra, who Lynceus would get with, and they would have Abus, who would lead to Acrisius, and then to Danae, who would get together with Zeus and have the hero Perseus. Cepheus the first would lead to Cepheus the second, who would get together with Cassiopeia and have the major character Andromeda, who would get together with Perseus. They would have Electrion and Alcaeus. Electrion would have Alcmena, who, getting together with Zeus, there it is again, Zeus can't keep it in his toga. They would lead to perhaps the most famous Greek hero of all, Hercules. Alcaeus would lead to Amphitryon, who would also get together with Alcmena, and they would together lead to Iphicles. So yeah, that's a look at the ancestors of Perseus and Hercules in that family tree. You'll notice there's a lot of inbreeding, Ancestors of Achilles, Ocean and Tethys, who we looked at in the first family tree, they got together to give birth to Asopus, a river god, who would lead to Aegina, who would get together with Zeus and would have Aeacus, who would lead to Peleus, who got together with Thetis, which would lead to the hero Achilles. Yeah. The House of Troy. Teacer would lead to Batea, who getting with Dardanus would lead to Erichthonius, who would lead to Tros, who would lead to the siblings Assaracus and Ilus. Ilus would lead to Laomedon, who would lead to Priam, who getting together with Hecuba would lead to the famous family of Troy, Hector, Deiphobus, and Paris. Meanwhile, back up in the family tree, Assaracus would lead to Capys, Capys to Anchises, who would get together with Aphrodite, would lead to Aeneas, who was supposed to be the survivor of the Trojan War that would travel northward, leading to the founding of Rome in one of the stories. So yeah, that's interesting. The family of Helen of Troy. We have Aeolus, who would lead to the siblings Pieres and Dion. Pieres would lead to Tyndareus, who with Leda would lead to the siblings Clytemnestra and Castor. But Zeus with Leda would lead to Helen and Pollux. We know Castor and Pollux to be twins, so yeah, even though she was with Tyndareus, Zeus was like, I'm not passing that up. It's like, come on, dude! Credit! Dion would lead to Cephalus. Who would get with Procrus. And that would lead to Arcesius, which would lead to Laertes. Back over Pieres, before Tyndareus, Leda, Zeus triumvirate, we would see Icarius, or Icarius, which would lead to Penelope, which Laertes would lead to Odysseus. Penelope and Odysseus would get together, leading to Telemachus. So yeah, we see some of the major names. So yeah, Odysseus was supposed to be distantly related to Clytemnestra, Castor, Pollux, and Helen. Interesting. The royal house of Thebes and Atreides. Hold on, this one's quite big. Zeus and Io get together to have Epaphus, who leads to Labia, who, getting with Poseidon, have Agenor. Agenor would lead to Cadmus, and Europa. Zeus, your fingerprints is all over this. Cadmus would get together with Harmonia, while Europa would be together with Zeus. Cadmus and Harmonia would lead to Autone, Eno, Agave, Simile, and Polydorus. Meanwhile, the coupling of Zeus and Europa would lead to Rhadamanthus and Minos. Now, Autonoe would lead to Actium, Eno would lead to Helicartes, Agave would lead to Pentheus, Simile would be gone after by Zeus to give birth to another god, Dionysus. And Polydorus would lead to Labdacus. Minos would get with Pasiphae, which would lead to Androgeus, Ariadne, Phaedra, and Castraeus. But yeah. While all this is going on, Zeus would end up having Tantalus as a child, a descendant, who would end up leading to Pelops and Niobe. Pelops would get with Hippodamia, which would lead to Atreus, the hero, Thyestes, and Pittheus. Now, going back over, Pentheus, back earlier we know of, led to Menoechius, which would lead to the siblings Creon and Jocasta. Creon would lead to Menoechius II and Haemon. Jocasta, meanwhile, would get with one of the descendants of Labdacus, who was Laius. And they would have none other than Oedipus. Now, Atreus would get with Erope, and they would have the hero brothers Agamemnon and Menelaus. Thyestes would lead to Aegisthus, and Pittheus would lead to Pethra getting with Aegeus, which would lead to the hero Theseus, which would lead to Hippolytus. Menelaus would get with Helen, and they would produce Hermione. Agamemnon would get with Clytemnestra, and they would produce Orestes, Iphigenia, and Electra. Meanwhile, the Jocasta from another family, or no, his own mother, Jocasta, would get with Oedipus. Remember the tale as it went, and they would have Eteocles, Polynicus, Antigone, and Ismene. So yeah, there's a full look at the House of Thebes and Atreidae. And the final family tree we have is the House of Athens. We got Erichthonius, which would lead to Pandion the First, which leads to Erechtheus, Philomela, and Procne as siblings. Nothing would come of Philomela. Procne would get with Tereus, but nothing would come of that. Erechtheus is the big one. They would lead to Cecrops, Orithia, Creusa, and Procris. Procris would get with Cephalus as one of the potential origins of Odysseus. Creusa would be with Apollo, but also with Xuthus. But it's under her time with Apollo that the son Ion is born. I think we went over that tale as one of the brief ones in here. Orithia would get together with Boreas, and they would have Zetus and Callias. Cecrops would have Pandion the Second, which would lead to Aegeus, who would get with Aethra, which would lead to the hero Theseus. Didn't we already see a way for Theseus? Like I said, there is so much weirdness in these family trees. No, we saw Perseus, but I don't think we saw Theseus. I don't believe we saw Theseus. Nope, I don't. Well, potentially, but no confirmation on that. Theseus would be with Hippolyta, also known as Antiope or Antiope. And they would have Hippolytus. But Hippolyta would also be with Phaedra. Woo! There's a lot of crazy names. Yeah, we see Theseus toward the end of the royal house of Thebes and the Atreidae. Aegeus, Aethra. So Pittheus, somewhere along the line, there would be anywhere from Erichthonius Dependian the second. Interesting. So some of the family trees do intertwine a bit. But yeah. The family trees of the heroes and the gods in Greek mythology. Woo! But, yeah, the final chapter there, we find out a lot of Yggdrasil and all the realms tied to Yggdrasil. We find out about the giants. We find out about, yeah, all this that's going on. But yeah. That ends the actual book, though. Even though there's numerous pages, it's all like bibliography, index, stuff like that. But yeah. But this is already closing in on an hour just for this video. But we got the book done. Next, we'll be getting into one of the Hindu mythology books. Bhagavad Gita. Because it's the only one I really have that's actual Hindu book. And of course it's famous for the one line when Oppenheimer creates the atomic bomb and sees it explode for the first time. He quotes from the Bhagavad Gita, the transformation into Kali, when she says, "I have become death, destroyer of worlds." Yeah. We'll be getting into that. But, as always, educate thyself. Think, read, study, learn. Someone tells you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, later.